Okay, what I'm going to do today is laminate some carbon fiber onto some pieces of my new airplane. This is a high stress point. This is the back of the wing where the wing bolts on the fuselage. This is the front portion, of course, where you can see the wing dowels go in. And I did these last night, or one side of them I did. These are the landing gear plates, and the landing gear, there's 4 bolts here, and the landing gear bolts onto this, and you can see one side is finished on both of these. Carbon fiber, comes in 1,000 forms. Tapes, fabrics, tows, bidirectional fabrics, different weights. This is here. This is 2.9 ounce fiberglass cloth, and this is considered 1K. And what that means is, in one of these tiny, tiny, tiny strands, there are 1,000 filaments. So if there was this 4K, for example, you just multiply by 1,000. So 4K would be 4,000 filaments. 12K, 12,000 filaments, and so on. This is very light. It is 2.9 ounce cloth, but it is 1K, 1,000 filaments per tiny little piece of tow. So that's a lot in that little piece. So extremely, extremely strong. This is what we call a bidirectional fabric, or bidirectional weave. It is weave both ways, and that's very, very strong. It's also recommended just to use epoxy resins, and I typically only use Zap products to laminate it. So that's what we're going to do today. And again, carbon fiber, extremely light, extremely strong. And if you look at this piece here, this is a 5-ply piece of landing gear, 1/4 inch. Well, the 3 dark ones, let me pick up the other piece. I think it's a little better here. You can see the 3 really dark ones in the center are 3 plies. There's a ply here, the light part, and then you can see the other ply right here. And if you look, it's hard to see. If you look very, very closely, I don't know how well the camera can see, you can see how thin, once laminated properly, how thin that carbon fiber application actually is. It almost has no bearing on joining another part. It's not going to push anything away, substantially space-wise. So that's what we're going to do today, and we'll go through a couple steps, and we'll mix up some resin, and I'll show you my way. I don't know if it's the best way, but it works for me, and you can see I get a relatively nice, tight weave, no resin, no extra resin, and this is what I do. So I'll go through a couple steps, and we'll go from there. I mixed up some resin. Working timer is approximately 20 to 30 minutes. I figure 15, be safe. Mix the resin up very, 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 very well. I think we're pretty good here. Now the technique that I use, excuse me, I'm going to talk you through it while I'm doing it. I'm going to work very quickly. The technique that I use, what you don't want to do, in my opinion, is coat a piece of fabric and wait for it to soak through and then into the wood. You don't have a lot of time. So if you have to use a little extra resin, in my opinion, no big deal. So what I do first, and I'm going to do it quickly, is I brush just lightly, not saturate, just a light coat on, boom, that's it. Light coat on, and lay your fiberglass on, and then brush another coat, not another coat, but brush the resin onto the cloth. We want this to soak in to the cloth. And it takes a couple minutes, but you want to make sure you get it covered. So we got one piece. We're going to do another piece here. And again, not soak it, just enough to, have it go into the wood. I mean, you want it to penetrate the wood to have it absorb into the fabric. So there we go. Again, you can actually see, I'm not sure if the camera can, but you can see the epoxy, the resin, going right through the cloth when I laid that piece on there. So I like to work very quickly, because when I do something, I like to do several pieces at once. So I'm doing several pieces here at once. Okay, so we've got those two. And we're going to knock this out. Again, just coat it. Don't go crazy. Just enough to have resin go into the wood. Just like that. There's another piece. And we're going to lay this mat right on here. Just like that. And then just put some resin right on top. Just like this. No big deal. And you're going to get stuff that's going to soak through, of course, the holes of, whatever you have here, but that's not a big deal. You just drill them out again, like I do, and you're good to go. And there's number 2. And we're going to hit number 3 here. Again, just enough to coat it. You want it to soak in. You don't want to waste time by letting the resin soak through the cloth and then expecting it to soak into the wood. It's a ridiculous way to do it. I see guys do that all the time and I want to scream. Because this is all going to be squeegeed out. You're not really adding any weight. Okay, next piece. And lay it on here. Boom. And squeegee your resin on. And then what you want to do, of course, is go back to the first piece that you started with, because that's had the longest time for the resin to soak into. Alrighty, and I mixed up a little bit too much resin, but you know what? Too much is better than starting a piece and you don't have any resin. Okay. Now these are pretty well soaked in, I believe, on my first couple pieces. I'm just going to put a little bit more just to make sure. And of course have lots of paper towels and alcohol standing by or you'll be in trouble. Alright, I think we're good. So what we want to do here now, again with lots of paper towels and have your alcohol by, is you want to take, and I just use a credit card. I stay at Marriott's all the time, so I just take my little card. And what you want to do is just simply squeegee, hold one side, and lightly squeegee the resin out of the cloth. And I just sacrifice, the first couple are going to be messy because you're going to be squeegeeing a lot more resin out. Just want to squeegee out just a little bit. Just like that. And this one is overhanging on the wrong side just a little bit, so I'm going to adjust this piece here. Same thing, just squeegee lightly, not a lot of pressure. Just squeegee out the resin. And light pressure, if you put too much pressure, what's going to happen is you're going to move the carbon fiber. You're going to start shifting the carbon fiber around, which you don't want to do. So just light pressure, that's all you do. A little bit of light. Sometimes they put a little alcohol just on the card, just a little bit. Same thing, just very, very light pressure. Let the resin just come on off, and you can see a puddle? It's puddling there and it's puddling on here. Just wipe that off. Boom, next paper towel. Again, just another wipe. And this time I got a little filament on there, which is no big deal. Swipe it off. And our next piece. One more paper towel. And we're almost set with these. We're almost set with these. Just very light pressure. And go over it a couple times just to drag it. And sometimes I wipe some of the excess like that. Just very lightly. What you don't want to see in the reflection, you don't want to see a shine. A shine means you have puddling. in the carbon fiber. You don't want a puddle. You just want the resin to soak into the fabric. You don't want extra material, I'm sorry, not material, but you don't want extra resin. So I think we're just about finished. One more paper towel here. Let me do my fingers. It's hard to see with the camera. Maybe I'll try to pick this one up. I'll probably wreck it. I'll have to put it back down. But if you can see in the reflection, you can see there's no puddling. There's no puddling at all. And that's what you want. You have a little extra resin. It's not a big deal. I mean, just a little bit in there. There's not much. But you'd rather have enough. So when this side dries, I'll flip it over and I'll take more carbon fiber and I'll do the other side. This will add substantial, I can't even tell you, this these 1/4 inch blocks for the gear, this will be like having 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch blocks in there. The strength that you'll get from this is astronomical. So that's the first step, and I'll show you in the next little clip. I'll show you how to trim it. But that's all there is to it. Let that soak in there, and we'll get some strength out of it, and we'll do the next step. Okay, it's about 3 hours later, and at this point the resin is starting to really get hard, but this is a good time to trim things. You don't want it to get too hard because then it's like epoxy. It's just impossible. So what I do, it's still a little bit soft, and you can still get a number 11 knife in there. Once you get it going, it actually, you can see it just sort of almost slides right down really nicely. It really just falls off almost. It's a little hard to get started sometimes, but this is the time to trim it while the resin is still somewhat soft. Less dust, less sanding later. And there's another piece, and you can get it pretty close. And then you still have to fine sand it. I mean, you still have to sand it, but you trim this one. And you can see it trims relatively easy. And the difference with the resin is if you use epoxy, epoxy gets really hard really fast. The resin allows you time to trim it like this, which is nicer. And like I said, a lot less sanding, and you can actually see the overflow of resin, and you just cut it right off. So this is, in my opinion, a lot nicer to use the resin. And you can just sort of fine trim, and you can get really close with a number 11 blade. You can get really close, so you can see again we're really close. Here's a little hole in the gear, so I sort of puncture that and just slide it right around. And then flip it back over, and just sort of, you can look through the hole on this and sort of fine tune it. Just takes a little effort, and at this point, you're going to have to use a little bit of pressure on the knife. But you can take all the extra resin off, which makes it so much nicer. You don't have to sand like a wild man. And you can see the hole in here now. It's relatively clean. Let me try to put up to the camera here. It's relatively clean and nicely cut. So this is a rough piece. You can see there's still a couple little high spots here. A couple little high spots. Just sort of trim them away. And basically, again, you can fine tune and trim very small pieces here, which you can't do with epoxy. It becomes more brittle. So that's the nice thing about the resin. You can see still, even though this is coated with resin, it's somewhat flexible. So there's one trimmed, and that's all there is to it. So I'm going to trim up the rest and be back in a second. Okay, as you can see, I have the pieces relatively trimmed up. This is the back wing bolt holder for the back of the airplane. You can see it's nicely trimmed, nice carbon fiber, and this is so strong, it is just unbelievable. Here is where the wing dowels go. Again, the back is not carbon fibered yet, but here's the front. You can see holes very nicely cut out, smooth. This again, tremendous strength. And both sides of my landing gear blocks are already finished. So all of these just basically need to be fine-tuned, sanded after they dry. You have to allow at least 6 hours. I allow overnight. And then I'll take and I'll block sand. I'll take my handy block sander here, and I'll basically, just simply, sand the edge just a little bit. Just sand the edge, take off the rest of the resin, and then what you're left with, you'll just have a beautiful, incredibly strong piece, and you're ready for application in the airplane. So that's how I do carbon fiber. And again, incredibly strong. I'm using it more and more and more in landing gear areas, wing hole downs, anywhere where you really want some strength. You don't want to add a lot of weight. The amount of resin that's in, something like this is minimal. But anyway, that's how I do it. I hope you enjoyed it. And there we go. We'll keep putting some resin on and fiberglass on the other side. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. Okay, here are the finished pieces. We already talked about what they were for, but you can see they're all sanded now. Everything is sanded nice and smooth, and if you look closely, the carbon fiber is so thin. When you squeegee the resin out properly, it really adds almost no weight. So the pieces, again, they're all sanded. Here's my 2 landing gear plates, my 2 plates. My part for my 2 dowels in the front of the wing, and my rear attachment for the wing. And they're all sanded completely smooth, and I'm going to actually put these in the airplane now. So they're ready to go and just incredibly strong.